So, Doom Patrollers, I just got finished watching the penultimate episode of Doom Patrol, of course, called Penultimate Patrol, and that was just perfection. What is up, Doom Patrollers? Welcome back to a brand new episode review of Doom Patrol, and I can't believe that this is the penultimate episode. It's just gone so quickly, and it's been such an enjoyable ride, but I'll save those kind of words for the finale. This episode, of course, guys, was incredible, and I think, I haven't evaluated it properly, but that, as I was watching it several times, I thought this might actually be my favorite episode. That was just so great, and I can't wait to go over all of the details, so I'm not even going to give a summary. I'm just going to jump straight into this, but go ahead, guys, and like this video if you do go on to enjoy it, especially if you enjoyed this episode. I just can't get over how good this episode was, and I'm just so happy that this show exists. Like, seriously, guys who write this show, I'm speechless. We start off the episode with Mr. Nobody's kind of origin. We did actually see that in episode 1, so I guess I would say that's the origin, where we saw him go visit Von Fook, and he essentially got his Mr. Nobody powers. But I like how they did the kind of origin to that origin, where we saw him in Chicago, Illinois, I think it was 1946, and we even got that presentation, or news of that he did a presentation to the Brotherhood of Evil. Now, the presentation involved ideas like the electro ray, the weather control, the giant robot, but despite all of his evil plans, he just got fired from the brain. And if you guys remember back to the Doom Patrol episode, we actually saw the brain's kind of case, but he escaped the brain case, if you will, and he's actually out there. That's why at the end of this episode, it was kind of like cool with the Brotherhood of Evil at it again. Even though that didn't actually happen, they are out there somewhere, and I guess, you know, hopefully we'll see them in season 2. At the minute, I guess they're just kind of planning away until we see them again. But I loved that brain reference. We also got a gorilla reference, which was actually Monsieur Mala. I thought maybe he was on about Gorilla Grodd, but then I realized Gorilla Grodd isn't in the Brotherhood of Evil, but he is essentially just like Gorilla Grodd, but more of a liking to guns. Now, this origin ties into the end of the episode with just viewing how Mr. Nobody has this kind of inferiority complex, and that is why he is the way he is. I just love this, and I think the closing line of this kind of flashback was, "You're just a nobody," and that is how he got his name. So if you guys remember from last week's episode, the Doom Patrol are after Beard Hunter, because if you remember, Rita put a tracking chip in or on Beard Hunter, and they were using Grid to track him down. And this is where we ran into Danny the Street again, which I was absolutely delighted about. I knew we'd run into him again, and this was just hilarious. My God, was this hilarious. We saw that Flex Mentallo knows Danny, but we kind of knew that before because Danny was the one to give Cyborg the idea of Flex Mentallo. I felt so sorry for Flex as well. I loved that scene on the bus on the way there with Larry sympathizing with him and saying, "We'll go after the Bureau after all of this in chief." Now, if there's one thing we know about Danny the Street is that he can bring the best out of everyone, and to the point where Beard Hunter was off the beard. I kind of liked that line. I mean, we all know like beards are his drugs, so he's off the beard. But I love that comment from Jane, Pube Stalker. I mean, guys, I love this show. I love it. I love it. We also actually learned that Danny the Street knew where Niles was this whole time, but he didn't tell the Doom Patrol. He kind of helped them out with Flex, but he knew the whole time that he was in the white space. And I don't blame him because Mr. Nobody, can threaten his town, his people, and everything. It was also really just nice seeing how flourishing Danny the Street was compared to what we saw him in the last episode. Even though things were getting better after Darren Jones, it was just nice to see that everything's like 10 times better. Now, one of the coolest things about Doom Patrol, just with the nature of the characters like Mr. Nobody, is the meta-ness to it. And we got an explanation from Flex Mentallo about the white space, because Flex knows all about it. And if you remember from, was it last episode or a couple episodes back, he explained how I think it was last episode, that he can open a door to anywhere, so it makes sense that he can also flex a door open to the white space, which is a place where content doesn't exist, essentially a space in between the page in comic book panels. Now, at this point in the episode, Flex Mentallo begins to flex so that he can enter them all into the white space, but something else ends up happening. I saw the trailer, but I thought they were all on drugs or something, but no. They were all having a very, very good time, and that was just hilarious. What more can I say than that is Doom Patrol? Like, right there, that is Doom Patrol, and I just keep funny things like this coming, please. That sounded But anyway, guys, on to the white space. So the Doom Patrol enter the white space, and each member revisits their past. Now, this is seemingly the origin of each character. And in this moment as well, we got an explanation that I just wanted to take note of in terms of Jane, because in the comics, it was the Dominator gene bomb that gave her her powers. Now, I don't blame the show, from what I'm understanding, to go a little bit of a different route with that injection that gave her. Like, she already had the personalities beforehand, but the injection gave those personalities like powers and everything that we see today. So I don't blame them for doing it that way rather than a random ass Dominator gene bomb, which I guess they didn't want to incorporate. Whereas this is quite a bit easier, and you know, it's not a massive deal of a change, I guess. So I found this element in the episode and the writing to this story just perfect. Like Mr. Nobody offering each member something they want more than anything is so tempting, to the point where the fact that they resisted it just meant to show, I mean, obviously how far each character has come. So I love how we got to the point where they were saying they're not the same team you dealt with like back in episode 1. They've all worked on themselves. Mr. Nobody was putting down like each of their developments. Like, for example, all Cliff did was steal a watch. Larry came out. Jane almost committed like mind suicide. But really, that couldn't be further from the truth. And you already know that. We know that. And that's the beauty of it. I think I found amongst all of these like scenes swapping in between, Jane's conflict to be the most emotional. I think I was like crying at this point because, you know, we had the different personalities coming out, because obviously I think it was like Hammerhead, she wanted to escape. I can't remember off the top of my head. But then like I think we had Jane just wanting to maybe stay as safer and safer for other people. But ultimately, the most important thing is to protect the girl, Kay Chalice. That's the only thing that matters, not just staying safe in some mental asylum. Now, I haven't spoke about Cyborg up until this point, just because it makes sense to talk about it now with all of the other stuff that was happening in between the scenes. But the Cyborg stuff was very, very moving in this episode. So initially, Cyborg goes over everything that he was paranoid about in relation to Mr. Nobody taking advantage of it. And we learned that there was actually some authenticity to Victor's like paranoia, if you will. Not all of his memories were real. And I think that is, you know, obviously been the seed this whole time. And I was just like, shit. This moment in the episode, guys, I was so into it. Like, the acting from Silas Stone and Cyborg, Jovan Wade, was just impeccable. It really was, and I completely understood both sides of the story. You can sympathize with Cyborg, but you can also sympathize with the position Silas was in, because after the accident, Cyborg and his mother were alive. We got the explanation of only one could be saved, but like, why Cyborg? Now, Niles did argue that Cyborg would have been a better candidate to accept that biotechnology, but also you completely understand where Silas was coming from. He realized that Victor's mother's choice would 100% be to save the son over her life, just like I feel like any parent would make that decision. I mean, if they wouldn't, then what? But ultimately, amongst these scenes, it was just so sad, and I understand how frustrated Vic was. That's why he went back to the Doom Patrol. You know, we saw him in the white space and whatnot. But yeah, I totally felt for Silas too. Which, you know, amazing writing yet again. Like it Now, the white space stuff in the episode, guys, this was just so fun. It really, really was. I love the way the Doom Patrol kind of seemingly overcame Mr. Nobody. For example, we had Rita narrating herself, and it even worked. We got to the point where Mr. Nobody, like, they were having this face-off in person. They saw Chief. They were all coming together. And that is when Dr. Harrison comes out of Jane, obviously, and this was very interesting. I was actually buying it, so I was like, okay, so is this how they're going to defeat him? But the whole time, like, as well as this is going, this is what I also loved about it, you felt uneasy, because you realize that this is the penultimate episode, and there's still a finale, so that was definitely something to bear in mind in the moment, as much as I was like, oh yes, we're beating him. So with Dr. Harrison's analytical breakdown of Mr. Nobody's mind, it was all about a lifelong sense of inferiority, and as I said, that's why I mentioned it at the beginning of the episode. It really does make sense. I think, you know, with what Millie, I think her name was Millie, was putting down Mr. Nobody by calling him a nobody. He was being put down and fired from the Brotherhood of Evil. He always just wanted to be better and valuable, I guess. Not inferior, but relevant. and that is why he is the way he is. It's really, I love how all of this was tying up at the same time. And come on, we always appreciate those lines, like I could control this whole entire streaming service right now if I wanted to. More lines like that, writers, please. I love it. I love it so much. Even do something to the website if you can. That would be hilarious. So at this point, Cyborg came behind from Mr. Nobody and shot him, or was it Cyborg? He said booyah. I was just like, yes, but this definitely isn't right, especially when we got into the whole Doom Manor section, how the Doom Patrol go to face off against the Brotherhood of Evil. And as I said, a part of me, like a quarter, maybe even a half of me was just like, okay, so they maybe did defeat Mr. Nobody there, and they're setting up the Brotherhood of Evil for next season into the finale. But if they did that, it would have been a bit much of a sudden death, too much of a sudden death for Mr. Nobody. So ultimately, as cool as all of this was in the park, and it was a dead giveaway when the massive giant ass robot was there, because that was one of Mr. Nobody's ideas in the presentation to the Brotherhood of Evil. So you could kind of, you know, especially after all the resets of the time and they kept going to the park, it was quite easy to suss out that this was all Mr. Nobody still. But that montage of deaths was just so funny. It was just brilliant. Each time seeing the Doom Patrol getting wiped out, Chief just reacting. But this is where we find out that the whole thing in the white space with Victor killing Mr. Nobody was really Mr. Nobody, just flexing how you cannot defeat him. Just give up. You can't defeat him. And this is when we learned that it was all about the truth. Everything made so much sense to me. It was like I had this eureka moment in terms of what they've done since Titan Season 1, Episode 4, Doom Patrol, and the recasting to this, you know, nice granddaddy kind of chief that they've got, Niles Calder, who seems to be, as I said, the nicest guy who looks after them all, and the way they've portrayed him all season, versus, as I said, the Titans Episode 4 Doom Patrol chief, who they instantly, right off the bat, portrayed that character, which is the truth in the comics, and which they've now given to the viewer with this realization of that he really isn't that much of a great guy. If anything, he's quite a rotten man, and this has been foreshadowed so much in this show through like Kipling and a couple of other things that the Doom Patrol just wouldn't hear anything of it. No, the Chief is a great guy. Why would he not be? And even I was like buying it up until this point. I thought, okay, Niles Calder, like there's definitely some shady aspects to him that we've still yet to learn, but they've definitely casted a different person to put him across in the way they've written him in a nicer way. But that is when we learn that each of the Doom Patrol members' accidents were not accidents, and that in fact he was responsible for everything that happened to each member. And that, guys, is when the penny dropped. And as I said, that is kind of really who the Chief is all about. And as I keep referencing back to, they really instantly gave that to you in Titans Season 1, Episode 4, with that Chief really just caring about, I mean, for example, that scene when Gar was trying to stop the Chief from trying to fix Raven to the point where he had to literally flex his Beast Boy skills to stop him from doing it. And even Raven got involved with that because that Chief is just cares so much for the fascination of the science and the creation. And that is really who this Chief is. But we just haven't seen that from this iteration of Doom Patrol, and I'm glad that they made those changes because it made for an exceptional story and an exceptional cliffhanger to this episode. So, you know, now we're gonna have to wait to see the fallout of this, and 100% believe that it's like a real thing. And honestly, I just don't know how the Doom Patrol are gonna forgive him. No matter what they've grown into, it's like everything's been undone. All of that is just gonna be thrown out the window. But this is what's making it such an amazing setup for a finale, because Mr. Nobody is still here. The revelation of that all their accidents weren't accidents. My God, like, next episode is going to be incredible. It really is. And this episode was incredible too. If anyone is sleeping on Doom Patrol, it's not like anyone's going to hear this message in this review, like if you don't watch Doom Patrol. But if you have any friends, tell them to wake the F up. This is the best comic book TV show I've ever seen, period. And, you know, just keep it up. Like, tweet them, your support for them. Just do anything like that, because I've never felt this way about a show before. Honestly, and I've been a big fan of other shows like The Flash and everything. Man, I'm almost getting emotional. It's just that great. I'm just, thank you so much for bringing this show to us, because I'm so in love with it. All the character development. It was just brilliant. So what did you guys think of this episode? Let me know down in the comments below. Leave a like on the video if you did enjoy it. Let me know what you thought of my thoughts. Obviously, it's been positive as always. I'm so happy with this, and I can't wait for next week's episode. So subscribe if you guys are brand new to this channel, and obviously, even though Doom Patrol will be ending next week, you can be sure that this channel will still keep up to date with all news. But other than that, everyone, thank you, so much for watching. Hope you have a lovely rest of your day, and I'll see you Doom Patrollers in the next video. Goodbye.